So welcome everybody. I'm with Shara, my growth backer here at Cyberbacker Maryland, and we're getting started on our leadership series. It's going to be a mastermind series. So we'll talk a little bit more about what mastermind is in just a moment, but Shara and I are going to be talking back and forth. Might have some of our Cyberbacker clients jump in and join us as we go through. And as we go through the series, I'm sure some will jump in and chime in and join us for a great leadership discussion. But in the meantime, let me share some slides. And we're going to get started just talking about leadership. What I've realized over time is, in the sense of leadership and accountability, when anything goes wrong at work, it's always my fault. I actually put out a dad joke about that last week, right? I was looking at some job postings recently, and they said they were looking for somebody that was responsible. And I realized that I'm a perfect fit because the last job I had, every time something went wrong, they said I was responsible. So to that end, I just want you to know that in leadership, anytime that something goes great on your team, we want to make sure that our people are getting the credit. And anytime something goes wrong on our team, traditionally, it's our fault. Even if it's somebody else is who did it, that means we probably didn't set up some great expectations. We probably didn't have a system or a process in place in order to make sure that things were going to go well and that we were prepared in advance. And because of that, I really feel drawn to have a lot of leadership conversations with business owners, with managers, with people that want to be business owners or leaders in their own business or workplace, like Shara. And so as we go through, we're going to ask a lot of questions. Get out a pen, get out a piece of paper, write down your own answers to the questions. Feel free to reach out to Shara, reach out to myself. You can email us at maryland@cyberbacker.com. You can email us at jeff@bemoreeveryday or jeff@cyberbackermaryland.com. And we'll get back to you and get you any information that you need from these slides. In the meantime, let's just jump through. You ready, Shara? All right.
Yes, I'm ready.
Perfect. So a little bit of first question I want you to ask yourself, and Shara, you can feel free to chime in on these anytime, whether it's this job or another job, but what have you found to be the biggest challenge that you face as a leader? So as a leader, either to your peers, as a leader to other people on our growth backer team, what have you found to be a big challenge, Shara?
For me, it's really how to be a good, a role model to the members under me.
Yeah.
How can I be somebody, who can be really, that they will look up to? It puts pressure at times since, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, role model can be intimidating, right? It's like, oh man, like I'm not perfect at this, right? If you're looking at me and I'm messing up, like that's a lot of pressure. One of the nice things about that though is that it keeps you on your A game a little bit. You make sure that you're doing things a little bit better because people are watching. I actually remember a time when I was starting to move up through the management ranks at Chuck E. Cheese. I had my boss, the general manager of the restaurant. I was just a shift manager. He was closing the restaurant down one night, and I was the opener the next day. And he had left me this list the last time I closed of all the things that he thought I missed. And so this time I walked in, and he was the one that closed, and I left him this list, like of all the things he missed. In retrospect, probably not the best idea. It definitely aggravated him. That I would get that nitpicky on his work, and just what a great sign and example of your people are watching you, right? If you're gonna talk to people and criticize people, and they're sitting there doing the same things that you are doing, that they're gonna look at you, either imitate the good or they're gonna imitate the bad, right? Like your level of standards spreads throughout the whole organization. So that's a perfect thing to put out. I know that for me, as a leader, traditionally, one of the things that I end up facing, one of the biggest challenges that I face is, am I providing enough support, right? Like, I just want to make sure that my people are able to do their job in a way that they're not feeling overworked, overburdened. They don't feel as if I've got their back. So often I run around and try to do things in order to make sure that that happens. So you, as you're watching this video on replay, write it down if you haven't written it down yet. What's a big challenge that you face in leadership? And so as we continue to go through the series, I just want you to have some of my contact information. Again, I am Jeff Kuhn. I'm a speaker, I'm a trainer, I'm a coach. I am one of the co-owners to the Cyberbacker Maryland franchise for virtual services. Shara, as we introduced earlier, you know, she's our growth backer here, which basically means she's my sales director. She runs a team of people underneath that help with social media, that do database, that do some lead setting, and connects with our potential clients to let them know what we're about, also help them outline their tasks and identify what a great job description and their hiring would look like. Shar, anything else you want to share about yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Jeff. Basically, yes, I work closely with Jeff Gunn. It's really a privilege to work closely with him. But I'm actually the one who help clients to evaluate their business to make sure that we figured out what are the things that can really help them to focus on their one thing. So, basically making them realize the power of leverage so they can double their business in time. So yeah, that's me. Thanks, Jeff.
Perfect. Love it. Yeah, absolutely. And a little bit about me, we're going to give you a 30-second history just so you know why I'm excited to teach a leadership class. So I mentioned Chuck E. Cheese. So I started Chuck E. Cheese at about 16 years old. And after Chuck E. Cheese, I moved into, I worked there for about 10 years. I worked as a trainer, and then I moved up into that shift manager type position. And then I was one of the youngest promoted general managers at Chuck E. Cheese. And what I quickly realized was that I was a much better manager than a leader. And so I was very good at telling people what to do and very good at telling them when they didn't do things. I was not very good at coaching them. I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder that, once I became the manager, to some degree, I didn't have to do certain things anymore. But at the same time, I also realized that I never wanted to ask somebody to do something that I had never done. I kind of like, we could do a daddy daycare type scenario with cleaning a restroom at some point, but we won't go into that right now. But it was a big life lesson for me at that point in time, where I realized that if I didn't coach and lead my team, that I was just going to keep losing them. And that's what was happening. I was probably losing 5 to 7 people a week, which means I was constantly hiring 5 to 7 people a week just to fill the holes. It was really, really tough to get ahead. Until I figured out what leading meant inside of that atmosphere. So then I moved on to Hasbro and worked in the board game industry and became an area manager with them over a couple of states. Kept advancing. GameStop ran 30 stores and over 300 people. Moved into a variety of other companies, including Tesla, Vivint Smart Home, Solar City. Ran regional director for many of those spots, running about 5 states, and inside of Tesla, over 1,500 salespeople, lead setters, inside of a huge variety of chains that you all would recognize. And again, one of the big things that made it work for us was taking the time each week to be a leader to our people. We literally ran contests with the district managers against the salespeople, district managers versus their salespeople on the sales floor. Just to make sure that we were staying in touch, because how quickly we lose touch when we give away the tasks that we were doing before we hired somebody to do them, right? I like to call it a gut check with my coaching clients. And inside that gut check, it means that you're grabbing and touching and like doing the role on occasion, just to make sure your systems are working for you, the process that you made is working for you. And you can understand where your people are coming from. So that being said, that's one of the reasons this appeals to me, is because so often we don't support our people. So often, so many companies don't grow because we're not supporting our people. And really, if we support our people, everything else becomes easier. Okay, so let's share some slides again. I'm going to go through what this content's going to look like over the mastermind here as we continue to move forward with this content. All right. So first off, in the Leadership Mastermind series, we're going to define our role as a leader. Fair? Okay. As a leader, we just talked a little bit about it. What is it that we're supposed to be doing? What is it that you want to do as a leader, right? Everybody's leadership is going to look a little bit different. How I act as a leader is obviously going to be different than how Shara acts as a leader. We're different people, right? And so, so some people are going to respond better to her, and some people are going to respond better to me. And it just really depends on what role you hold in the company as well, right? So define your role as a leader. We're also going to, as we're building the organization, determine what our vision is. So this is outlining the future org chart of the company, you know, what we want our company to look like 5 years from now, 3 years from now, and at the end of the next year, right? So how should we be building? What would our company look like if it was ideal? What role would we be in the company? You know, some people are CEO or president, and other people just want to be a sales director, and they know that they're going to have to hire somebody to grow the company bigger than them. That's John C. Maxwell's law of the lid, right? Company will only grow as big as you are. So if you got some doubt as to whether or not you can run a really large company, you might need to consider somebody else above you. So great. And then, as we just mentioned, who will you need to achieve it? We're going to talk about how you find and hire good talent, what talent looks like. We're going to talk about welcoming our winners, how you onboard them, how you train them, how you're setting the expectations for their success. We're going to look at leading your team. What is it that you need to do to be a leader? I mentioned the game that I had my district managers play every week with our team. Every Tuesday morning, they'd run out and do all the things. And that way we all were in touch with the field, so to speak. And then how will we develop our team? And then finally, we've hired them, we've welcomed them and trained them, we're leading them, we're developing them. Now what do we need to do to hold them accountable to the work? This is probably going to be 7 or 8 sessions, you know, as we go through, depending on the amount of questions that we have, depending on the amount of people that join in, and how we break these up. We're going to make sure that we have a session towards the end for questions. And that way, if you've gone through all of the content and you still want to dig in and to something that's not on this list, let me know, send me an email, and we'll make sure to include it. Okay, so first off, what's a mastermind? All right, so traditionally when they're in person, if it's a mastermind, it's me asking questions and all of us discussing it, okay? So feel free, if you've got other leaders in your office, again, we're making this available to just our clients, but if you have other leaders in your office that you think would make sense to sit down and have a discussion around these questions as we go through it, invite them into the room, sit them down, let's talk about it, right? You having an open discussion with the others around you is really going to help you grow and figure out what it is that other people are doing that you're not, that can also help you grow, and that should be a big advantage. In the meantime, I've got 2 requests. Play all in, right? It's a big one. When we're asking questions, don't hold back, right? Like, you know, this isn't one of those YouTube videos that you just play in the background while you're doing a jog. Like, have a pen, have a piece of paper, like write down what it is that you need to do to get the work done in order to grow, okay? And then if you're on our call, please keep the camera on and be involved in the discussion. When you're involved in the discussion, it's going to help everybody grow as well. We're here for abundance and for giving and adding value to everybody involved. So let's talk here. First off, our purpose as a leader. So Shara, when you think of a leader, what is a leader?
For me, it's someone that you really want to be like. For me, it's someone that was also a follower and a believer of something.
Okay.
So you know, when you have that influence, basically everyone will follow.
Yeah, I like that. There's actually have you ever seen the video Lessons of Leadership from a Crazy Dancing Man? No, it's, I mean, it might not be exactly what it's called, but it's close. If you look at Crazy Dancing Man Leadership Lessons, you'll find it on YouTube. But I love that, right? Because what's really, really interesting is, as a leader, if I don't have anybody following, I'm not really a leader, right? Like,
Exactly.
right? Like, I mean, what are we talking about here? You know? And so what makes that really interesting for me, though, on top of that, is that likewise, usually, Shara, when I'm a follower, what am I doing? I mean, just simple phrase, right? Like, You said the leader had been a follower. So if I'm a follower, what does that mean I'm doing?
Basically, you have to listen, you have to obey, or you have to follow the process, something like that.
Yeah. And I'm learning from who?
From my leader, from the boss, from, yeah,
So what
somebody
happens when the
from
leader's doing
the
something
top.
wrong?
Basically, if I'm that position, I will feel demotivated to do it, since my boss is not believing on something that we should do, or then maybe I will just relax and chill if ever, right?
Yeah. And what I find is really fun, and it's just the strangest notion, right? Is Shara, who taught you how to do an interview?
Mm, no one. Oh, basically, I learned it from my corporate job before, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. Was
the
it like an
interview, yeah.
official interview class? Like, did everybody sit in a class and they teach you how to interview? Or did you sit in on other people doing interviews and learn that way?
Yeah, something like that.
The second one?
I learned it. Yes, the second one.
Yeah. And so how do you know your leader was doing it right?
If I notice that the result is okay, if I see that there's a progress or something is really happening closer to the vision or the mission of what we're doing, I think it's effective.
Yeah. And so from a SMART goal, we can look at a process and determine whether or not it's relevant. If we know that we have a goal in mind, and if their process is working, we can determine that it's relevant. But for the most part, like, we're just trusting that our leader knows the way, right?
Yeah.
So it's really
Yes,
it's
Jeff.
really crucial to align with somebody on leadership, right? Because if you're following a leader that's going the wrong way, that's a problem. And like, so because
Yes.
then what ends up happening when we become leaders?
I don't think it's gonna work for sure,
Yeah, yeah,
because we don't know how to do it, basically.
yeah, exactly. We end up leading them the wrong way still, right? So well, I can't even tell you, how many times I've walked into something and just realized that everybody there didn't know how to do it, because their leader didn't know how to do it, because their leader didn't know how to do it, right? Like, where a whole organization was doing something wrong because the person at the top was wrong, and everybody just followed blindly. And it's such an interesting place to be, because how do you know whether or not you're doing it right?
Mm.
Well, first, one of the things is you come to these masterminds, right? um, and I think one of the other questions that we ask ourselves then is, what's the purpose of a leader, right? How do we know we're doing it right? What's our purpose? How do we know we're doing the right job as a leader? What do you think, Shar? What's the purpose of a leader?
Well, basically, for me, leader is meant to lead someone, right? So basically, your goal is to make sure that you influence them, or you allow them to do the things that they need to do, just to make sure that they're really working or closer to your goal. The reason you want them to be part of your organization or your business is basically you want to hire them to make sure that you will hit your goal or something that you want to do, the reason why you created your business. So something like that.
Yeah, motivate them and
But yeah,
energize them to hit the goal, right? Are they hitting? And whose goal are you motivating them and energizing to hit?
both ways. For me, a good leader also cares about their well-being, not just the business goal, the business and business, but also someone who also look out for their people.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? And so, how many of us know a goal, a personal goal of somebody that's on our team? Write that down. So, if you know the goal of the people that are on your team, I want you to take a moment and write down the goals of some of the people that are on your team, the people that report directly to you. Write down what their personal goals are. Like, so often in work, we walk in, we get told what we need to do in order to achieve at work. And then we go home, and I'm not saying our home life stinks. I'm not saying it's bad, but everybody has a dream for what they want to accomplish at home too. And a lot of times we achieve our work goals faster than our personal goals because we don't have that same accountability at home. We don't have a boss standing over our shoulder saying, "Oh, are you doing that? Like, did you get it done? You told me you were going to buy a house by the end of this year. Shari, you told me you were going to release your first single," you know? And so to that extent, like, do you know your team's personal goals, and how are you helping hold them accountable there? Because I really believe, by the way, that that is the goal of a leader. It's when we help our team achieve their personal goals, guess what happens, Shara? Guess what they've got to do, by the way, to achieve their personal goals?
But basically what I'm just seeing here or seeing there, if you also care their personal goal, like what they're actually always saying, that if you love your people, they will also love you back, and they will also take care of you. So I think they will feel more energized, more motivated, and they will really value you as their boss or as their leader, because you also values them as your people. So it both same ways, right? So
and L is a strong word. I mean, you know, it's got to be 4 or 5 dates before I use the L word. Well, I'm just I'm kidding, and I completely agree with you, right? 100%. And primarily because if my people know that I'm supporting them, they're going to pour in more at work. And it's not meant to be selfish sounding. It sounds a little selfish when you say it that way, right? It's like, I know if I pour into them, I'm going to get more at work. But I'm doing it because as a leader, like, not everybody should be a leader. The purpose of a leader is to build your people up. And if I can't build my people up, perhaps I shouldn't be a leader. Perhaps I should just be a manager somewhere, but we still need to have another leader on board, right? Like, that's the difference between like a CEO and a COO. COO makes sure that the systems and the processes are being followed, that all the operations are being handled. The CEO is providing a vision and a course for a company, right? And so inside of your own company, your purpose is to make sure your people achieve their goals. Now, how will they achieve their personal goals? Well, by hitting their work goals, because that's how they're going to get paid correctly, right? Like, you know that you get to pay them and get to keep paying them when they're hitting their work goals. If they're not doing their work job, you're going to have to let them go, which means they won't hit their personal job goals, right? But we also have to talk about it. We want to figure out how they're doing. We want to know what it is that they're aiming for and where it is that they're intending to go, right? So to that extent, this is, again, time for you to get out a piece of pen and paper. And Shara, I want you to do this too. All right? So big question for everybody. What kind of leader do you want to be? One more time. What kind of leader do you want to be? Talked about a couple different types of leaders right now, right? We talked about the manager, somebody that's standing there and telling people how to do and what to do. And we've talked about leaders that are purposeful and want to lift their people up and help their people achieve. So that's very generic, though. But if you're looking at your team, your people, the growth of your company, the growth of your people, write down what kind of leader you want to be in your own words.
Can I share?
You got
Sorry.
Did you got it?
Yeah, I have.
Perfect.
Yes, I have one word in mind. I want to be a leader who's very relational, who always connects to people, because I know for sure that even though, let's say, I'm a leader, uh, uh, I can still learn from them. I can still, and because I'm a learner, I really want to learn from a lot of people around me. So being relational, and I just know that I can really hear from them, learn from them. And then aside from that one is I'm really building relationship with them. That it's not just work, it's not just about we have to we really have to, hit our goal and goal. But basically, I want to know them more, like what they do outside work, their family, what their hobbies. So outside work, we can still, you know, we're still friends outside work or something like that, just to make sure that I can still connect with him. So
Yeah,
someone, like, yeah, for sure.
good. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I know you know this, but like I want to be a leader that's looked at as being supportive, right? Um, somebody that every single time I talk to my people, I ask the question, and you know this literally, how can I help? Right? Um, what can I do this week that helps? What obstacle are you running into? How can I help? And then I do it. I got to do it, right? Because again, otherwise, um, what's going on, right? What's going on? So next question, what are you doing to create an environment where others can thrive? So Shar, you were just talking about being relational, right? And so inside of being relational, what are you doing to create an environment where others can thrive? So again, this is the topics that we went through in the beginning. Like this is where we're heading in this mastermind series. How are we helping them onboard? How are we helping them train? How are we helping follow up and develop them in such a way that we know there's going to be growth? What questions are we asking? How are we holding them accountable, right? Like, how much space are we giving them in order to grow some on their own, right? Like, we don't expect our kids to be mirror copies of ourselves. We shouldn't expect our people to be either. Like, we're not hiring robots or automatons. We're hiring people. So write it down. What are you doing to create an environment where others can thrive? Okay, here's another question. We've kind of gone into this a little bit here in this call already. Maybe this question should have gone a little bit earlier, but as a leader, who are we serving? Some people are, wait a minute, I've got a whole bunch of clients, right? Aren't I serving my clients? There's an opportunity for both, right? There's like a quote out there that if you're not serving your client, you should be serving the people that are, right? So in that sense, like the further separated you are from your specific client list per se, that means that it's our job to serve the people that are serving the people, right? So if I'm a waiter at a restaurant, the person that's waiting the tables, the manager over the front of house team is serving the servers who are serving the client, right? Just to make this literally, who are you serving? And then the general manager over the front of house manager, the general manager is serving the front of house manager and the back of house manager. He's making sure that he's providing the front of house manager and the back of house manager, or she, all the support that they need in order to be successful. Because then the back of house manager, she's making sure that the kitchen staff is doing amazing. And the front of the house manager, she's making sure that the wait staff is being amazing. And so we take it one more step back. Then the district manager, she's overseeing the general manager, who's overseeing the front of house and back of house, who's overseeing the kitchen staff and the servers, right? And so who are you serving, right? A lot of people in leadership serve themselves. Like, they look at, what can I do to be successful and get promoted and do the best at my job? But again, many of you, I'm sure, learned very early in that the easiest way and the quickest way to be promoted, again, kind of a paradox of leadership, is to serve your people and get them promoted. I used to always tell my team I could never promote them until they developed somebody to take their place. Right? So if I had a store manager that wanted to be a district manager, great, I'll promote you to district manager once you have multiple people ready to go to take your store manager spot. So the more store managers that get promoted out of your stores, the fewer excuses I have to not promote you. It's like, you just hired the whole district. Every store manager around here, like, they used to work for you at some point. You should be leading them at this point, right? Same thing with the district manager. How does a district manager move to territory director? Well, the district manager moves to territory director when some of the store managers he's promoted, he's taught leaders to become leaders of leaders. What? Okay, right? So it just keeps going up the chain. Who are we serving? And what makes that really important, and this is something that I've got a worksheet for. So if you're watching this, you're listening in, and you're like, well, darn, Jeff, like, this is great. This is awesome. I love what you're saying. But if I'm not creating automatons and I need people to be creative and I'm allowing them to be their own people, then what is it that I need to look for to make sure I'm bringing people on that are strong enough to become these leaders that we're talking about, right? That still align with me enough, if they're not the same people, right? That I'm going to feel good about them. And so one of those big things is, what values define you, right? So we're going to have two different sets of values here. We're going to have your own personal core values, the things that you know that you need to do, and the way you need to present yourself to your employees, to your family, to the world, in order for you to be able to ethically walk away and feel as if you did a good job today, okay? Something that, like, if you ever had a job where you walked in, Shara, and just felt dirty, like, you're like, I don't want to do this. I feel bad doing this. This is not like, and it's not just because it's hard, it's because it feels icky. Like, you feel like you're being dishonest to either your employees or your clients. You ever felt that way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so clearly, what does that mean? That means that company wasn't a value match for you. You and the company did not align on what that should look like, right?
Right. Yes.
Right. And so that's a personal values. Now, what gets interesting here is, when you started your company, did you also create corporate values? So, like, I have my top 10 values chart. Like, I know what my top 10 core values are. And every year they change just a little bit, in the sense that my top 3 of those 10 are going to vary. Those top 10 are almost always the same, but the top 3 might change depending on what my focus for the year might be, right? Like, you know, as my kids are in high school and I know they're all just about to leave and I'm going to be an empty nester in 4 years, like, my family values is a little bit higher today than it was when they were, you know, toddlers. I feel like I need to be home more in these high school years than I needed to be when they were still drinking out of a bottle, right? And so family's always been important to me, but family is a top 3 core value currently, whereas 18 years ago, it was just a top 10. Make sense? So inside of your corporate values, I think your corporate values, as you're building your company, are going to be aligned with your personal values. You're going to have some of the same values, but there's going to be other values that entertain into your corporate values, like tenacity, for instance. Like, tenacity is important at work, and you're probably not going to pick it as a top 10 for a personal value, right? Like, top 10 for a personal value might be adventurous instead of tenacious. Who knows? But point being is, what are your core values? I have a worksheet I made. It's a pretty cool little Google sheet. You got to drop in some X's, drop your list from 250 to 100 to 50 to 10, and then your top 3, as far as helping you to streamline and figure out what your personal values are. And then you can also use and repeat that same exercise for figuring out what your corporate values are. And then you hire to it. Okay. So in a similar way, like Shara and I were just talking about, and I'm sure you've experienced in the past too, if you ever have gone to work and felt dirty about the work that you're doing, you're not aligning in values in some way. Now, this could be a misunderstanding, and you need to have a conversation with your boss and figure out why you're not aligning with the values, or it could be not a values match and it's not the right company for you. It's your gut literally saying, this is probably not a place you should be working. And in that case, you need to find some place that is closer aligned with the values that you hold, right? Like, you know, I don't want to go across the line here, and you know, like, for somebody that's strongly religious, we can all probably think of places that they wouldn't want to work. Like, a strongly religious person is not going to work in an exotic club, right? Per se. In fact, some strongly religious people aren't going to want to work at a bar, right? because it's just not in line with how they feel and how they want to set up their life. And then likewise, somebody that's a party goer probably isn't going to want to work at a church, right? Like, and it goes both ways. So to that end, what aligns with your values? What aligns with the person that you want to be, the leader you want to be? We defined what kind of leader we wanted to be. Now we need to figure out what values fit into that leadership and into our company. And then we want to start looking for talent that fits those values. So Shar, do you know any of your values? I know you've done some value assessments in the past. Do you have any core values that you know?
Yes, pretty much first thing that I really wanna part of my personal value is really love and respect towards people around me. Another thing is integrity and honesty. That's very important. Who are you when no one is looking?
Yeah.
Like like something like that. Like who are you in front of your boss and out, without your boss looking at you and watching you. So should be the same person. So it's a big thing for me. Third is
Integrity is one of
really
mine too,
growth.
by the way. Oh, before we
Mm-hmm.
go on, I'll let you do your
Yeah.
growth in a second, but integrity is one of mine too. Right. For me, my
Yeah.
definition of integrity inside of the workplace is do what you told me you're gonna do. Right. Like that's just a simple thing for me.
Yes.
It's and that's a tough, that's one of my like, that still gets my jaw to clench. Like if somebody says they're gonna do something and then they don't do it, like I'm like, man, like I don't know if I can trust you if you can't do this little silly
Yeah.
thing that you said you were going to do. You know, then I remind you a couple of times. But integrity is on my
Yes.
list. I have not
Yes.
written a corporate core values list in decades that didn't include integrity. So, see, Charlie, you,
Yeah.
me, right?
We
Like in the
connect.
interview, like we
Yeah.
connect. Respect, another
Yes.
big one. Love it. And we've talked a lot about
Yes.
family, love, and passion. So keep going though.
Yes.
Growth. Go ahead.
Right.
You're saying growth.
Well, first with the integrity, I just want to explain with that one. Well, I'm a firm believer of like let your yes be yes and your no be no. So if you commit to that
Yeah.
thing or if you commit to that job when you sign a contract and there are so many things that you need to do and you sign it, you have to do it since you commit to
Yeah.
it. So I
Yeah,
I
I
value
love that.
that
Let your
much.
no be no
So
too. Like
yeah.
same thing. Like I don't care
Yes.
if you tell me I
Yes.
can't do it and you tell me you're not going to do it. Okay, I'll find somebody else. But once you tell
Yeah.
me you are,
Just
that's a different
say it if
story.
yes.
Yeah, I
Just
love that. Let your
just
no
let
be
me know if
no.
you
Yeah,
can't do it because yes, because if you can't do it, let me handle it by myself if ever I'll find somebody to take care of it.
yeah,
But yeah, that's a big
100%.
deal for me. And that lastly is growth because from I'm not sure if you're for sure you've heard about that Strengths Finder Gallup that book. But basically one of
First break
my
all the
strengths
rules.
is
Yep.
yes, basically, it's learner, but two of them are actually it's five, but I want to share with you these, Jeff. So my top five is belief, so input, learner, connectedness, and responsibility. Those are my five strengths. So it's really the learner thing that I really into because I really like, for example, even like this mastermind, I really value this much because I know I can learn a lot because for sure I can apply it to to the church, to someone that I'm leading, I can apply it to anything or whenever I need it, I have it on my mind. So I want to make sure that I read books, I learn from someone who's like my leader, my accountable person in the church, because I know I value training so much. So that's
Yeah.
maybe the reason why growth is one of the things that I really value as a yeah, or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I love it. The first leadership class I ever took was in the church youth group, right? As I was working my way up and working into leadership, the church required you to have a leadership class in order to be a leader in anything. And I was like 17 or 18 years old, and I wanted to be one of the little leaders. There's a youth pastor, one of the smaller leaders inside of the youth group, and so they made me go to a weekend leadership seminar, right? So yeah, absolutely, right. In everything we do, you know, do it with excellence, right? Love that. Sure.
Yes.
Perfect.
Same.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome. Great. Okay. So we know what we want to look like as a leader, and we know what the values are that we have for ourselves and for our company. We know that we're there to support our people and help them grow as a leader. And that way, when they achieve their goals, we and our company can achieve ours. So you said this, right? Let your no be no. But Shar, how are you being authentic and vulnerable to your people? So how do you, like, because you said it yourself, right? Like I got to make sure I'm doing the right job. Like I got to make sure, like there's a lot of pressure to do it right when you're the leader. Sometimes we mess up. Sometimes I don't do, like I just told you integrity is important, but every now and then I'll tell you something, or I tell somebody else something and that I'm going to go do, and I don't do it 100%, right? Even if I do it, sometimes I don't do it 100%. Like if I've got a follow-up system for getting in touch with somebody and I reach out one time, but don't try again the next couple of days, like that's not my personal follow-up system. We have better follow-up systems than that. And if I don't do it, then I only gave like a 30% like energy level, right? I didn't give 100% like I would tell my people to do. So what happens then, right? It's like, well, I'm the leader. If I didn't do like my job, can I tell my people that?
That's a great question, Jeff. To be honest, it's really hard to be a leader because everyone sees you, right? Everyone looks at you and is really watching every actions that you make, because basically they want to be like you. Like you're a role model of that organization or that company. So
Yeah.
that is where that being a human, you're just being a human. It's just being a a person who also makes mistake. That's why that's very important to me that you're also humble if you're a leader. That you're accountable in your own mistakes. That yes, there are so many times that you're not always 100%, but you have to be accountable to your actions and allow your people to see it, because for sure they will learn from there, and they will really learn from you that see, our leader is admitting that they're also making mistakes, or they're also basically they're just being honest with themselves that sometimes we fail. But the good thing there is we have to show them that what will you do if ever you make mistakes. Will you be doing the same mistake again, or you will create an action plan to it? So it's how you process things, or um how you fix or solve that personal issue of yourself. And I think how you resolve it is something that um your people should learn from you, something like that. So I think
Yeah.
it's really okay that we admit to ourselves that we're just we're just being human, right?
Yeah.
But
And what's the
yeah.
flip side of that, right? If as a leader, I never admit to my people that I've ever done anything wrong, what standard am I setting? I'm kind of setting that it's not okay to admit when something's gone wrong, right? Like everybody knows I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect, right? Like it's
Yeah.
impossible to do something perfect 100% of the time. In fact, I used to be a gauge when I ran a really large team. If somebody did something perfect, not just a person, but a team, if there was a team that did something perfect, like right away, they were lying.
Yes.
Because it doesn't happen, right? Because perfect's not possible immediately. We can get to a place where we hit almost 100% of our free throws, right? Like, and it takes time. And so when you introduce something new and you say, "How'd you do?" and they say, "Oh, it's perfect." No, it's not. That means you're not paying attention, and people don't believe you, right? And so I love that you said that, because it's the same thing. It's like if I'm setting up a standard of perfection that you can't fail, then I'm putting a lot of unnecessary pressure on my team. Or as you said, you give them the ability, the recognition that failing is okay, because when we fail, we learn, and when we learn, we get better, and when we get better, we all get better, and we have a chance to grow. So it's being vulnerable to your own failures. You said it 15, 20 minutes ago. You said that we can also learn from our people. Again, I'm not doing the job every single day, right? There is zero way. Like, I guarantee if I did a business evaluation, I would do a great business evaluation. and it's not going to be the business valuation that you do, and it's not going to be as good as yours, right? There's no way that anybody would say, if I sat down to do your job or Irene's job, that I'm going to do it as good as either of you, right? I have things that I can learn from you. I have things I can learn from Irene. And every single person that works for me in any position at all, has something that I can learn from, because they're the ones that are doing it with repetition and learning from their mistakes and growing and continuing to move on. And so to me, that's awesome and fun and fabulous that there's not a single person in this world I can't learn something from. And so it makes every interaction kind of magical, right? It's like, what can I learn from this person, right? And it does mean that I've got to shut up and listen sometimes in order to learn those things from those people. And it's amazing what ends up happening. But that also means vulnerable, right? Because it means I'm admitting to the fact that I don't know the answer to every question. I can't.
Yes.
Because I haven't lived 7 billion different lifetimes, almost 8 billion on the earth today, right? Like, that's pretty crazy. So love it. Yeah. Be authentic, be vulnerable, and make sure that your people know that by you admitting that you can learn from them and admitting to them when you've made a mistake, and sometimes one-on-one asking for forgiveness if you've slighted somebody, right? That's a big part of being a leader. So a couple final slides as we wrap up here. Shar, any big takeaways from today?
I learned so many things. What highlights me or to me earlier is really the values, especially your personal values, because as you do your job, as you do your responsibility as part of a business or a company, you have to make sure that, and also ask yourself, is the values of your company also aligns to your personal values? Because it's very important that it's very aligned and connected, because it's how you gonna work really on a daily basis, how it's gonna energize you. Because if you have the same values or have the same mission, personal and corporate wise, it's really easy for you to do it. And even though it's very satisfying, it's motivating. And because as you fulfill your responsibility corporately, you're also fulfilling your values personally. So it's really important for me. So that highlights to me, actually, that's something that reminds me, or it's really a highlight for me today. Yeah.
I think what's really interesting about that, like as I was listening to you talk, it made me think there's some companies that the company values, like if you go look at their website, or you walk into their lobby and you see their values written on their wall, like their corporate values, their company values do align with what I think my personal values are. But then because they're not hiring to their values, or they made a wrong hire, the leader over me, their values and I don't align, right? And so sometimes I've agreed with a company's values, but then I've worked under a leader whose values didn't line up with the company, didn't line up with me. And so again, kind of a crucial part about making sure that we're hiring to our values, right? Because if we hire outside of our reported values, our stated values, then the people that are coming to us because they want to work for a company that believes in those things, they want to work for leaders that believe in those things. When they don't work for those leaders, it's an easy way to get discouraged and to move on. Yeah, that's great. Love that. Great. Okay, so you all on the other end, same thing. Write down some takeaways. Like, what did you learn from this session? Not only what did you learn, but what are you going to do? What's your action item from this? Is it to take that core values assessment for yourself? Is it to really flush out your definition of the leader that you want to be? What is your purpose as a leader? That was today. Okay, so coming up next week, Shara. So next Tuesday, if you're watching this live enough that you're going to be here for August 8th. If you're not watching this live enough that it's here for August 8th of 2023, then check back in and see if you can find the second of this Mastermind series here on this YouTube channel. In the meantime, Session 2 for Leadership series. We are going to get into next week. We're going to get into building the big vision for you and your company. Because again, from an org chart perspective, what do we need to look like? What type of company, what shape of company per se do we need to build? Who do we need to be hiring? We need to understand who and how this is going to fit into our organization in order to be able to identify the talent that we're looking for. Make sense? So it's step-by-step process as we're growing here inside of the leadership, and then we get into the hiring, the onboarding, the training, and then again we will get into how to hold your people accountable and to make sure they're doing great work each week. So also next week we have a revitalize your routine. We're about to get back into work and school. If you've got kids, everybody's summers change things up. How many days does it take to make a habit, Shara?
21. Is
See,
that right?
I
Or
love that you said
66.
that. There you go. See, 21 is what a lot of people think, but it really takes about 66. For most people, summer break is about 66 days. It's about 2 months, right? And so what we've started doing over the past 2 months as we've been in these summer months is starting to become a habit. The question for you is it a good habit or is it a bad habit? Who knows? But you can join us August 10th for a larger mastermind in order to get a better understanding of how that's fitting with you. And finally, some homework. Write this down, right? What is your long-term vision for your company? That is going to be next week's session. So I want you to identify that before we come on board, because if you haven't identified that, you're not going to be ready to dig deeper and to flesh that out on our call next week. What will you have accomplished personally in that amount of time? So what's your company's big goal? What do you want your company to look like long-term? And then where do you want to be once you've hit it, right? That could be on a house on a beach. That could be exactly where you are, but with more money and savings and retirement. Who knows? But write it down, and we will come back next week and talk about that. Okay?
So great. I love it.
Well, thank you, everybody. And we will see you soon. Have a great one.